My name is Nora Whitfield, and I was 32 the morning my mother rang my doorbell for the first time in 14 years. She stood on my porch, holding a leather folder, smiled like we'd had lunch the week before, and quoted the price of my own house at me like she was reading a bill. $170,000. That's what's fair, Nora. I never gave her this address, my number, or my town. She had it all anyway. By the end of that year, my mother would put a price on raising me. A judge would read her handwriting out loud, in open court, and my father, the quiet one, the harmless one, would do something on the courthouse steps that not even she saw coming. She looked good. That was the first thing I noticed, and I hated noticing it. Diane Whitfield, 58, hair set, coat pressed, standing on my porch in Millbrook, 2 hours from the town I'd escaped. "You look thin, Nora," she said, warm as a bank teller. I asked how she found me. "I never lost you, honey." It's all public record. She'd tracked my business ads, my cat in the window, the county deed for my house, 14 years of hiding, and she'd been watching the whole time like a lender watches collateral. Behind her, my father's truck idled at the curb. Whatever was in that folder, they'd planned together. Growing up in Ashford, my mother kept what she called the family book, a green spiral notebook on top of the fridge. Every dollar spent on me went in it. Sneakers, field trips, my first paycheck at 14, itemized as room and board, $40 a week, due Fridays, receipted in her perfect handwriting. I thought every family did this until I ate dinner at a friend's house and nobody handed me an invoice. Only my grandmother Ruth's kitchen felt free of arithmetic. "You're not a bill, you're a girl," she'd say, like an apology I didn't yet understand. At 18, my mother laid out my future. I'd work full-time, nights, and my paychecks would go toward the raising balance. College was a luxury item. I said no. My first flat no ever. My father, standing in the doorway with his coffee, said the sentence that would follow me for 14 years. "Just give her what she wants, Nora." It's easier. That night I packed 2 bags, took $1,100, hidden in a tampon box, and caught the first bus out of Ashford. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was arithmetic. I'd calculated I couldn't afford to be her daughter anymore. I built a life the boring way. Diner shifts, overnight stocking, night classes. By 22, I had an accounting degree and a talent for making numbers tell the truth. At 26, I opened Whitfield Ledger Services. Yes, spitting into the wind with my own name. I kept everything, every lease, every bank statement since I turned 18, filed and labeled. I called it professional habit. It was actually a girl raised on invoices, forever bracing for an audit. My grandmother found me at 25, and we had 2 good years of Sunday calls before she died at 81. At the funeral, my mother hugged the receiving line with identical duration, then looked at me across the casket like I was a storage unit she'd been paying on. 2 weeks later, a banker called. Ruth had left a payable on death account, $20,000, to me alone. No probate, no family discussion. 15 minutes after the funeral lunch, my mother asked sweetly, "What are you planning to do with the family's money?" I sat on that money for 2 years. Then a little brick house on Marigold Lane came up for $170,000. I brought $34,000 to closing. Ruth's 20, my 14 saved dollar by dollar. I planted marigolds along the walk and put Ruth's teacup on the windowsill. For 3 years, that house held my whole quiet life. I never thought about the county recorder's website. Public, searchable, a love letter for a woman built like my mother. So there she stood, 3 years later, sliding her typed family property agreement through my screen door. My parents wanted to buy Marigold Lane back for exactly $170,000, what I'd paid, ignoring that it was now worth $235,000. The $65,000 difference, she explained, was the raising balance, finally called due. "You bought this with Ruth's money. Ruth's money was my money. That woman skipped over me to spite me, and I'm done being skipped." When I refused, her warmth vanished like a cut power line. "We're not asking, Nora. We're collecting. 30 days, she said, and left. I hired attorney Elena Brandt, who read the agreement and said flatly, No consideration, no signatures, no enforceable anything. But your mother believes it. That's the dangerous part. Don't answer unknown numbers. Everything in writing, everything saved. The campaign started before the 30 days ended. My Aunt Patrice called crying, having heard my mother's version at church that I'd stolen family money and abandoned my aging parents. A client with Ashford relatives quietly dropped my services. I didn't defend myself publicly. Elena said the courtroom was the only room where truth got a microphone. Then came the certified letter, my parents' lawyer demanding I convey the house within 14 days or face litigation. Elena's reply was 1 page, no. A month later, a sheriff handed me the real thing on my own welcome mat. Whitfield versus Whitfield, 3 counts, and a notice of lis pendens already recorded against my deed. My title was frozen. I couldn't sell or refinance while their case rode along. Elena explained the strategy plainly. A meritless lawsuit isn't designed to win. It's designed to bleed you. Money, sleep, clients. Until you sign something just to make it stop. Then came discovery. And with it, my mother's Exhibit A, the green ledger itself, submitted as proof of a documented pattern of family lending. I read it at my kitchen table until the coffee went cold. My whole childhood at retail, down to interest, charged on my babysitting money. Even Elena went quiet. I've never seen a plaintiff hand me their own cross-examination. That night, I pulled out my banker's box, 14 years of bank statements, tax returns, Ruth's payable on death paperwork, the closing file for Marigold Lane, and, in a plastic sleeve at the bottom, the actual Friday envelope receipts in my mother's handwriting, which I'd taken the night I left. I wrote Whitfield v. Whitfield, on the box in block letters and set it by the door like a packed suitcase. My deposition was 4 hours of "Isn't it true you were supported?" I answered exactly what was asked, nothing more. My mother's deposition, though, cracked something open. Under oath, she described her own mother's cold kitchen, her own stolen nursing school acceptance, years of signing her paycheck over. I paid my mother back every cent. That's what a daughter is. Then, asked about interest on my babysitting money. Money teaches. It was for her own good. By November, family had sorted itself like rock salt on a shaking screen. Patrice gave me an ultimatum. Drop the case, come to Thanksgiving, or be forever the girl who put her mother in a courtroom. Then, past midnight, my father called. Livy, Nora. Just give her what she wants. It's easier. I asked. Easier for who, Dad? Silence. Click. December nearly broke me. Legal bills past $11,000. A second client gone. The lis pendens killing my refinance. Opposing counsel's office floated a settlement. $40,000 and the suit disappears. I sat with a yellow legal pad and ran the numbers like I would for any client. Then I looked at that green notebook's shadow in my mind and understood. $40,000 wouldn't buy an ending. It would buy a receipt, proving the raising balance was real. I crossed it out. Elena filed for summary judgment. The hearing smelled like radiator dust. The judge, Callahan, asked for the writing that proved any promise about the land. There was none. He picked up the green ledger himself, read one line aloud. Room and board, age 14, collected. He looked at my mother. "Ma'am, this is your handwriting." She sat up straighter. "Yes, Your Honor. I've always kept fair books. Children are an investment, like anything else." The room went silent. That, Callahan said, may be the saddest sentence anyone has said in my courtroom. Summary judgment for me, on all 3 counts. Lis pendens released. The house was mine again. Then Elena wanted to file for sanctions, frivolous conduct, forcing my mother to cover my attorney's fees. I flinched at becoming the collector. Elena said simply, "You're allowed to not pay for your own mugging." I told her to file, actual costs only. At the sanctions hearing, my mother represented herself. Judgment came down against her, $14,500, and she turned to the gallery, strangers waiting on other cases, and said, "Do you see what she is? Charging her own mother." Nobody looked up. I thought the courthouse chapter was over. It wasn't. It just moved to the steps. Late February, hard blue sky, salt crunching underfoot. I stood on the steps while my mother argued with my father across the lot, her voice carrying in pieces. She took everything, Ray, and you just stand there. I watched his shoulders climb toward his ears. Then he crossed the lot fast, wrong, grabbed my shoulders and shook me. This quiet man who'd never raised a hand to anyone, roaring words I'd never heard from him. I don't know if he threw me or lost his footing on the ice. I went into the stone railing hip first, wrist twisting wrong, elbow splitting open, lip catching the corner. Deputies who'd watched through the courthouse glass had him face down in the salt within seconds. My mother, 20 feet from her bleeding daughter, shouted at them, "That's my daughter. This is a family matter." The ER. Sprained wrist, splint, 3 stitches, photographs for the record. My father spent the night in a cell, charged with assault. I filed for a civil protective order. Ohio law counted him, no matter how long we'd been apart, and signed a witness statement for the prosecutor. I walked in as their daughter. I walked out as the state's witness. 4 days later, my mother's voicemail arrived, warmth fully restored. Drop the charges, withdraw the order, forgive the debt, come home for Sunday roast, and you'll have your family again. I played it 3 times in the dark, and it worked on some 10-year-old part of me, until I picked up Ruth's teacup and reread her note, tucked away for years. It was never your debt. Don't pay it twice. I saved the voicemail to the case file, not as evidence, but so I'd never again wonder what her forgiveness cost. At the protective order hearing, I got 5 years, no contact, 500 feet. At the assault trial, the defense tried to paint my testimony as revenge for the money I'd already won. I looked at my own evidence, stacked on the prosecutor's table, and finally understood it for what it was. Not caution, but a daughter's decades-long savings account of proof. It isn't revenge, I said. It's the first true thing this family has ever put in writing. My mother took the stand for the defense and came apart in front of everyone. It's not over. It will not be over until she pays what she owes. I gave that girl everything. My father was found guilty, 180 days suspended, 1 year probation, anger management, no contact. Asked if I wanted to speak, I stood and said, "The only thing that mattered. Love isn't alone, Mom." She flinched, the first honest reaction I'd ever seen from her. Outside, my cousin Josh, 19, in a tie he clearly didn't own, was waiting on a bench. "Somebody from the family should be here for you," he said. "On your side of the hall." I hugged him with my one good arm. Spring came the way it does. Mud, then everything at once. The sanctions judgment got paid in pieces, every dollar going back where it belonged. I never charged a cent past my actual costs. My refinance closed clean in April. My parents moved into an apartment. My mother still tells her version to anyone who'll sit still for it. My aunt still writes that the door is always open. I don't answer. It's not anger. That account is simply closed. You can't make a deposit at a bank that's been demolished. The marigolds came back on their own that spring, volunteers from last season's seed. Most Sundays now, there's a beat-up hatchback in my driveway and a tall kid at my kitchen table, and I walk him through financial aid forms for free, forever. "First one in the family to go," Josh says. "Second," I tell him. I just took the long way. One ordinary Tuesday, I finally opened the banker's box for the last time. The closing file, the tax returns, back on the shelf, papers for living. Ruth's note went in the drawer with my passport, where I keep the things that prove who I am. The bundle of Friday envelope receipts, my mother's flawless handwriting, $40 a week, age 14 to 18. I held it for a moment, expecting to feel something enormous. Instead, it felt like a stranger's utility bill from a closed account. I dropped it in the recycling and made tea in Ruth's cup while the truck came and went. That night, I wrote in my garden journal. Not a ledger, just a plain notebook with no sign of a column anywhere. April. Marigolds came back on their own, and I sat in my quiet kitchen, in the life I was told I could never afford, and noticed the silence had changed temperature. It wasn't held breath anymore. It was just evening. Nobody was coming to collect. Everything in that house, including the woman living in it, was finally, fully paid for. So here's the one thing I know for certain. If someone hands you a bill for loving you, you don't owe the balance. You owe yourself the door. because love that keeps a ledger was never love at all. It was layaway.